welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air, and bringing information about your library and your community. This evening, my guest is Carla Wilkinson, who's going to tell us about a very exciting set of programs we have coming this fall that we got a grant for, and one of those great things we can bring to Peoria that you wouldn't otherwise get to see. Hi, Carla.
Hello.
I love it when we get these grants, and we've been very successful at this. So, what's this one?
Well, grants like this tend to stretch our imagination and our creativity, and this grant that we applied for and received is Latino Americans 500 Years of History. So we have some lovely graphics to show you.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so
there.
And I love the picture on the left here because it shows just how far back we are going. That isn't even as far back as we're going. This program starts in the 16th century.
Oh, wonderful.
So we are going quite a ways back. And what this program will be is a series of documentary films. We also hope to have some great discussions about Latino American history, not just in the U.S., but in Peoria as well. And we have a very growing Latino community here in Peoria, and so we hope to engage them as well in some of these programs.
Yes, and some making great use of the library as well. So,
and we hope to encourage future use of the library to maybe people who aren't using it now, and introduce them to the services that we offer.
Yeah, because it's a great way to become an American if you're recently in this country or learn more about it. But as you said, this goes back to 1600. So.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're going to show a series of documentary films. This Latino Americans is a PBS series, and it's actually 6 films. We're only going to show 3 of them, 3 parts of the whole big thing. So we will have it available to check out from the library after this program ends, so you can check it out if you'd like to watch the other parts that we don't cover. And we have gotten some professors from Bradley University to agree to moderate these programs. We want experts to help lead discussions, and so because I am not an expert in this topic, so we have a couple of different Bradley University professors, and also a professor from Arizona State University will be joining us over Skype for one of the programs.
Nice.
So these will be starting in the end of October, beginning of November, and we hope to fill November with Latino American programs.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay.
So the first one, we're going to show episode 3. We're not starting as far back as this goes. Episode 3 starts in 1942 and goes to 1954. We cover World War II. This will be moderated by Dr. Amy Scott. She is the professor of history at Bradley and has some expertise in this area. The Zoot Suit riots is one of her specialties.
So that's one of those things that you remember sort of, but I don't really know about it.
You've heard of it, but you don't really know anything about it, and
I didn't realize it was related to Latinos.
I believe it has to do with racial issues between servicemen. We don't think of, when we think about racial issues during World War II, we know about the Tuskegee Airmen, and we know about the African Americans in World War II, but we don't think about the other minorities at that time.
Well, we probably may know more about the Japanese being interned in camps and not trusted and all.
Yeah. So this documentary, which is called War and Peace, will cover some little-known Latino American war heroes. The first Mexican national to earn the Congressional Medal of Honor was a man named Macario Garcia. He received that for his efforts in Europe, and then he came back home and was refused service in a Texas diner. So it's the contrast of war hero and then coming home to be refused service in a diner.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about things like that. The Zoot Suits refer to riots in Southern California over race between the Anglos and the Latinos. And then we're also going to talk about GI rights. If I'm guessing that the Latinos maybe weren't afforded as many rights as the Anglos, and so that's a big discussion topic.
Yeah,
and
what
so
happened?
And the description for this episode says that although the Latinos made significant gains during this time period, inequality was still huge. So there are a lot of changes, but it's still not a perfect world.
Yeah, not getting where they need to be.
That will be on October 29th. That's a Thursday evening.
Okay.
And all of these will be at the North Branch.
Okay.
In the Mackenzie Room on the big screen. And
big screen, digital sound.
Yes.
Wonderful.
6 o'clock in the evening for all of these
free.
programs. Free parking, big parking lot. We want you to come in and enjoy these documentaries and engage in some great discussion. So the second one we're going to show is episode 5. So we're skipping episode 4. We're going to skip ahead a little bit in time. And this will be 1965 to 1980.
Okay.
And we'll show this the following Monday on November 2nd. And for this one, we're going to have 2 moderators, sort of, one in person, one over the internet. Dr. Araya Toshki, who is a professor of history at Bradley University and is herself a Mexican national. She will be there in person to lead the discussion on this section of the documentary. And then over Skype, we'll have Dr. Matt Garcia, and he is a professor of history and trans-border studies at Arizona State University. And Dr. Toshki recommended him because he has some expertise in Cesar Chavez.
Oh, all right.
So this section will cover Cesar Chavez.
Do you want to explain who that is for people who may not know?
He worked towards rights for farm workers.
Right.
And so we're going to talk about that part of history, farm workers. And that's still, I saw on TV on CBS Sunday Morning just this past week that farm workers are still working for rights. And there's a big movement in Florida now for tomato growers to pay their workers higher wages because they are paid not very well and working conditions aren't very good. So that's still something that's a big issue, but Cesar Chavez kind of led the charge in working towards equal pay and better working conditions for Mexican farm workers. This section will also cover the introduction of the Chicano identity, and I can't exactly explain that one here.
I haven't heard that. I mean, I remember hearing that word a lot in the 70s, but I haven't heard that word in a long time.
So that was in the 60s and 70s, and that was building a new identity for themselves to get better social conditions and more respect in the community. This section also covers things like people you've never heard of, maybe Sal Castro, who was a school teacher who led the largest high school walkout in American history, demanding that the Chicano students be given the same educational opportunities as Anglos. So it's the same kind of themes we may see in African American civil rights, but they aren't as prominent. We've maybe not heard of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about little-known people like that who made a big impact, and about education and how eventually Chicano and Latino topics were incorporated into school curriculum. So this is a big section that covers a lot of different changes and a lot of interesting things. And
and immigration is such a hot topic at this very moment that I think, being able to attend these programs and talk about them give people a much better understanding of, what's gone on in the past. And sometimes I think people think immigration is a new thing.
Right, yes. The immigration has changed and our views of it have changed. But it has been a topic for a long time. Latino Americans have been here for 500 years, so it has a big history.
A lot longer than the Irish.
Yes. Yes. So that's episode 5, and again, that's November 2nd, and these are all at 6 o'clock in the evening at the North Branch.
Can they bring snacks?
Yes, you can bring snacks. Bring some popcorn. Maybe we'll have snacks. Who knows?
Yeah.
The last part of this series we're going to show is episode 6, And this one is called Peril and Promise, and this brings us up to 2000. It's 1980 to 2000, so this is a huge time period, and a lot of things happened during this period.
Yeah.
And again, this is going to be moderated by Dr. Toshki from Bradley, and this covers a lot of that immigration. It's the Cubans coming to Miami, and Central Americans fleeing death squads and mass murders, and so it's bringing a different community into the U.S. and different impacts that had. And we're also going to talk about celebrities like Gloria, Estefan, and the Miami Sound Machine, who kind of popularized that sound and made it accessible for Anglo-Americans.
Right.
And then Oscar de la Hoya, who became an Olympic gold medalist in boxing and kind of made a face for Latino Americans in the sports world. And he is still a prominent, important person in the sports world. And that one will be the following Monday on November 9th. So the first one's on a Thursday, and after that we're going to try to do every Monday in November. So that one, again, is Dr. Toshki, who has she's very excited about bringing this topic to Peoria. She's been here for several years, and she feels very passionately about these issues and Latino American history, and she wants to engage with the community, and she's very, very excited about leading these discussions. And then the last film that we're going to show is one that she recommended, and it's called Harvest of Empire. This is not part of the Latino American documentary series, but it is another standalone documentary, and it covers a wide range of topics in Latino American history, social issues, immigration. It's challenging the negative stereotypes of Latino immigrants. So it's in response to this negative stereotype that has been built by recent immigration issues. And it is trying to overcome that negative stereotype and show the positive impacts of Latino American immigrants. And so it's going to focus on the contributions of Latinos in American society, and hope that people can develop a deeper understanding of this and of the U.S. policies that have to deal with immigration.
Which are complicated.
They are very complicated. And so it has interviews with lots of different people. Junot Diaz, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, he wrote The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. Great book that I've been told I need to read, but I haven't read yet.
I haven't gotten there yet.
So that brings in another topic of we can encourage people to read these Latino American authors. Junot Diaz has written for adults mostly, but his books are very accessible for young adults as well. And there are a lot of great Latino American authors. Sonia Manzano, who is Maria on Sesame Street, wrote a young adult book a couple years ago and won an award from the American Library Association for that book. And so there are lots of hidden treasures that we can point out to people. And that one will be on November 16th. That's Harvest of Empire. And again, Dr. Toshki will be leading a discussion on that. So we're hoping for a great discussion on that one.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. And we can possibly do some things like we might have a bibliography of Latino authors and
absolutely. Yeah. OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Bradley, is I believe going to be doing some films in conjunction with this program. So those people who are active in OLLI can look for some films on Latino American history.
Yeah, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Bradley has been a wonderful partner for the library, and often focusing or supporting same themes, so people can get a double dose. They can do the OLLI class, they can do what we're doing. And
I believe they want to do a big discussion on the movie and book Giant.
Oh, okay.
Which is...
I almost watched that last week.
It's Elizabeth Taylor, I believe.
Yes.
And it covers some Latino American history and farm workers, and it's, I believe it's a really long movie. So they're maybe going to do it in a couple of parts, but there's a book that it's based on, and so they want to talk about that and the history and how Latino Americans were viewed at that time in film.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Do we get to talk about Ricky Ricardo at all?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
My
he'll
favorite.
come up.
Yeah, Ricky Ricardo. How could you ignore Ricky Ricardo and Lucy? And you wonder too, was that a scandalous marriage?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That Lucille Ball married Ricky Ricardo a couple of times, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, and this follows on the heels of our Perry Reed's book from last year, which was about immigration. So we've kind of
that kind of opened up some opportunities for us, and it kind of made us think about things like, what are we offering at the library? What are we doing for these Latino American immigrants that we know we have in the community? And so we would like to reach out to that community and offer them more services and get them familiar with the library, because I've noticed in my years at the library, when you have an immigrant community coming in, they maybe don't know how a public library works in the United States.
That's something that they've had experience with.
Right. So we want to invite them to come in a low pressure environment and show them what they can do with the library. They don't know how it works. They don't know what services are available to them. So we want to offer that and show them all the things that can be useful to them and to their children. So we're hoping to have an open house to showcase our Latino services at the library, welcome that community in, and get them sat down so that we can talk to them and see what they want from us as well.
Yeah, what would be helpful? Well, we know some folks have taken advantage of things like our ebooks or our talking storybooks that you can do in different languages, and we have Mango languages, which there's programs on there that you can access over the internet for people who are English as a second language that can really help with learning the language. But I've always been fascinated the times I've gone out into the community, done things like library card sign up, and there'll be a little bitty child like this old, and you'll have grandma and all the aunts and uncles, and that child will be translating for the rest of the family. But it strikes a chord with me because I know my father did that. He was the only one in the family that spoke English. Everybody else spoke Hungarian, and I know he translated for the rest of the family and taught them to read English. And so that strikes a chord with me too. And maybe only being a second generation American, I identify a little bit more with this than those of you with deeper roots. But I think about how many Latino Americans have much, much deeper roots than I do.
Right. Yeah. So that's something we know that parents are bringing in their children, and their children know more English than the parents do, and so we do want to offer those services like Mango languages, but we also do have Spanish language materials.
Yes, we do.
We have books in print, we have ebooks, movies, lots of things for people.
We've worked on our collection so that people can read comfortably in their native language, enjoy that, and they'll find that all the library staff will welcome them and work through the language barrier if folks come. But I think this is important too for people who don't know what to think about this sort of controversial storm of conversation going on in our country right now about immigration, illegal immigration, and people tend to focus on the Latinos, and you got to wonder, the names keep changing, Latinos, Hispanics, Chicanos, and what, where do all these things go? And so maybe there'll be some discussion too, so people know.
Yeah, that's what we're
do you
hoping
say?
as well. We're hoping to open up some dialogue about this immigration issue, and maybe take away some of the negative stigma that comes with it. We see one thing in the media, but what is really happening, and that's Harvest of Empire seems very interesting to me, because the goal of that is to take away that stigma and show the positive impacts of Latino Americans. So it's an interesting topic. It's a controversial topic, but we are not ones to stray
Yeah,
away
the
from
library
controversy.
doesn't shy back from
No,
that at all.
we want to have open dialogue with the community, and so we're hoping to have some good discussions through these different documentaries and any other programs we might have to go along with this.
Yeah. Do we know, are we having any children's programs, or have they been planned yet? It might be kind of far out for that.
Yeah, I don't know of any yet, but it would be fun to have something like that and introduce even our littlest patrons to Latino American culture. There are certainly a lot of interesting things. You know, they could dance to Miami Sound Machine.
Yeah.
Enjoy some foods. We're hoping to incorporate food somehow into these programs.
Well, certainly this food has, infiltrated the American menu.
Absolutely. And we have some great Mexican restaurants here in Peoria, and some great new businesses. There's the Mexican ice cream place on Main Street. And,
Yeah.
so there are lots of different opportunities to partner with businesses in the community as well.
Mm-hmm. Get them involved too. Yeah. Now you said there's 3 other parts that we're not going to show, but people can watch. What are those parts on?
Well, they cover from the beginning of this 500 years up until 1942. So there are 2 sections in there, and those cover a much broader time period. The first one is a lot of history, probably people you haven't heard of, and the
It's
beginning
interesting
of
when
this
you
country.
think about the first immigration was, the Spanish into
the Spaniards.
the Spaniards coming into Mexico and South America and creating a different group of people who now immigrate here.
Right.
And
Yeah. So it's an interesting look at how the immigration has shifted over time, because yes, they did originate in Spain and came here to, there were some in Florida, most in Central and South America, where there were native peoples, the Incans, the Mayas, the Aztecs, and over time they have just become the Latin countries, and so now those people are immigrating into the United States. So it's a shift in movement there.
so much the United States was already a different country, like take Texas and California, for example, that had very well-to-do, very well-established families that were all or part Mexican,
Right.
and I'm not even sure if they were what they were called, but they were already there long before the Americans came, and they worked with and welcomed the Americans, and it's a bit ironic always in my thought that now those are the states that are fighting to keep people out when,
Right, yeah.
when that was part of that land to begin with. And so those earlier parts probably cover some of those things. Think about the Spanish missions in Florida and California, and also thinking about the Spaniards bringing horses, which created the whole horse culture on the plains with the natives. So
Yeah, it's a broad history and a lot of topics to cover between when this begins in 1942. Then episode 4 would be in between there in 1954 to 1965. So in between World War II and
sort of the Vietnam
era. So that baby boomer time in there.
And that's when you've got Lucy and Ricky Ricardo.
Right. And a lot
probably
of things,
the Cuban Missile Crisis. Is it in one of the later ones, or is it in it?
It's probably in the one before this. And a lot of things were happening in the U.S. at that time. The 50s were a big time of prosperity. And so what did that mean for the Latin American community, this minority? Probably was not the same history as we Anglo-Americans have.
As we remember and what happened.
Not the rosy, June Cleaver lifestyle.
Well, and then at that point, of course, you've got introduced the fact that we cut off Cuba, which, of course, that's in the news, just opening our embassy there and reestablishing relations with them. But all these years, we've had people from Cuba trying to get to America and people trying to get back. And
Right. So this is a very interesting time to be talking about these topics, especially when we applied for this grant. We had no idea they would reopen relations between the U.S. and Cuba, but that's an interesting thing to bring into this discussion, is how that has changed, and how Cuba has changed in that time. And
and how are the people from Cuba different from the people from Mexico or the people from South America? Just.
And an interesting thing about Cuba is here we embrace some of these Cubans who are trying to get to the U.S. because they're escaping this communist government, and then we have different feelings about the Mexicans who are trying to come across the border. So that it's how we perceive those different cultures as well. And so it's a great topic to discuss at length, and so I hope that it will be a really great program for all of these topics.
Oh yeah, it's going to be very, very much in depth. Well, we got about 1 minute left, so would you go over the dates and times and things again here, so people, in case people didn't catch them?
All of these programs will be at the North Branch. They'll all be at 6 o'clock in the evening. They'll start on Thursday, October 29th. That's episode 3, War and Peace, 1942 to 1954. Episode 5, Prejudice and Pride, 1965 to 1980, will be on November 2nd. And that includes a special guest, Dr. Matt Garcia from Arizona State University, who is an expert on Cesar Chavez. Then on November 9th, episode 6, Peril and Promise, 1980 to 2000. And that will be, again, with Dr. Araya Toshki from Bradley University, who is very excited about this. Just her communications with me, she's very passionate about this topic.
About getting that information out there.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then November 16th will be Harvest of Empire, a documentary covering immigration and trying to change the stigma, the negative stereotype of Latino Americans. So that, again, November 16th, a Thursday, and then 3 Mondays in a row.
All right. Thank you, Carla.
You're welcome.
You can get all the information about the Latino American program coming pretty soon up on our web calendar and in Looking Passages, or just give us a call. We'll see you next week on Information Please.